Welcome to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. I'm David Waybright, and I'm here with Jeremy Salinas to talk about The Blood of an Englishman, yet another two-player game in this year of two-player games.
I know, these are your favorites too.
It is. I love two-player games.
This is all about Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yeah.
And basically, you're going to play with a set of 50 cards that represent either beanstalks, numbered 1 through 9, or with Fee, Fi, Fo, Fum, which are the red cards that you see here. And there's also some treasures.
Right.
That represent the goose, the harp, and then the gold that Jack was looking for. So each of the players is going to play one of the two antagonists.
Either Jack or the Giant.
Or the Giant. With their own particular asymmetric goals of completing something.
Yeah, that's one of the greatest things I love about many two-player games, this whole trend towards asymmetry. Mm-hmm. This play, I mean, you're both manipulating the same thing, but it plays very, very different.
So I'll talk about Jack, or I'll talk about the Giant. I'll let you talk about Jack.
Start with the Giant.
So the Giant's goal is to basically hinder Jack from completing his goal. He wins from one of three different ways. Either to create a Fee, Fi, Fo, Fum in a same single row that you see here. The order of the Fee, the Fi, the Fo, and the Fum does not matter as long as they're all adjacent to one another in one single column.
Right.
He can also win by having Fee, Fi, Fo, Fum at the bottom of any of these four columns. And again, it doesn't matter the order in which that happens.
Right, but across the bottom row?
Across the bottom row. And the last way that he can win is simply by stopping Jack from progressing for his victory conditions. I'll let you talk about Jack's victory conditions, and then we'll talk about how each of them moves the board a little bit.
Yeah, so Jack's victory conditions, he's trying to create beanstalks. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be taking beanstalks and treasures potentially from the main board here and building his own little beanstalks in front of him.
Yeah.
The trick here is you have to build them in ascending order.
Yeah.
So the beanstalk cards number 1 through 9. Mm-hmm. So the first stock you're going to want to take is a low number, obviously to give you enough room to get up to 7 beanstalks and then a treasure on top.
And he has to build those, which is the cool portion. He can't build all 3 of his beanstalks at the same time.
No.
He has to complete one of the beanstalks before he can move on to the second one and then onto the third one.
Right, and the treasure has to be different on each beanstalk.
So they're going to have a goose, a harp, and a gold at the end of each of those. So how does the gameplay move? I'll let you talk about Jack first, because he seems to have the more simple of the movements.
The smaller movements anyway. That's
absolutely.
What's cool thematically is Jack's movements are kind of small, and he can do more than the Giant.
Right.
And the Giant's moves are very large and devastating at times.
Right.
So Jack can do one of a few different things, and he can do 3 of these things on his turn.
Right.
So one of the things he can do on his turn is to take any card from the front and move it to the front of any other column.
Right. So he's basically manipulating the fronts of each of the columns.
Exactly. The next thing he can do is take a back card from the top of the beanstalks on the table and bring them to the front.
Right.
So then, how do you get them to your own personal beanstalk? You can take any card from the front or any card from the back to your own personal beanstalk. So those are basically the 4 different ways Jack has of manipulating the cards on the table.
And remember, his goal is to build in ascending order 3 different beanstalks. So he wants to pull low, and then the second card has to be higher, and then the third card has to be higher than that, all the way up into, I believe it's 6 cards? Or is it 7 cards that he has to have? He has to have 6 cards, and then the seventh card
is
it needs to be the treasure. Now, the Giant moves in a much more lumbering style way. He can take 4 cards that are adjacent to each other in one column from the front and move them to the front of any other stack.
Right,
so he's taking giant columns of cards and moving them over.
Right.
That kind of impedes Jack's ability to pull single digits from the front of a line. Another option that he has is to simply take any 2 front cards and just move one to one location and one to another location. They have to be different from one another. So he can't move the same card one spot and then move it to another spot.
Right.
And the last thing he can do is simply take any beanstalk anywhere on the board and throw it out of the game permanently.
Yeah, any beanstalk card, right?
Yeah.
Even in the middle of the...
Yeah, so
that's pretty rough, too, because as Jack's looking for certain numbers, we've played some games where, I'm looking for that 4. I want a 4. And then you're just sitting there picking them away.
Right.
So it becomes challenging for sure, and you could basically get into a situation where you're Jack where the Giants basically defeated you from eliminating your options.
And what's really cool about this game is that the game really kind of gears towards Jack in the very beginning of the game. He has very quick movements. He has the ability to manipulate the board quickly. But as he starts to fill out his beanstalk and starts to pull these cards out of the game, his options become limited. And the Giants' options become more clear because the fee, the fi, the fo, the fums will always remain in the columns.
Exactly.
Right? So he's going to have those cards being removed, but his is going to start to condense down. So that as the game progresses, the Giant naturally starts to become stronger and stronger with his abilities.
Right. And one of the great things about any asymmetric game, but this one in particular, is as you're making your moves and trying to achieve your goals, you have to keep in the back of your mind how things play for the other player and how you're manipulating the board. Because as Jeremy just said, Jeremy might, as the Giant, set things up so, that 4 that I need is right here.
Yeah.
If I take that 4, it might set his fee, fi, fo, foam up really well.
Right.
So there's a lot of things to think about. You can't just focus on your own immediate goals.
Yeah, so as I get into the review of this, I would personally say that the beginning of the game is very slow. It doesn't start to take shape until Jack starts to get about midway through his second beanstalk. And then as playing as a Giant player becomes a lot more enjoyable for me as playing as a Giant player, because then you're starting to control the board a little bit more. You're starting to be able to hinder Jack from being able to get the cards that he needs.
Well, and there's less of a board there, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it becomes a little easier for the Giant to manipulate things, because the Giant's really trying to limit options.
Yeah.
And as Jack plays the game, it changes for him, too, because his options become more limited as the game goes on. So things kind of shift a little bit for the Giant, I think, in the second half of the game.
Well, definitely. I mean, I think of games mathematically, and I look at this and I see 50 cards. Once he gets 2 columns done, that's 14 less cards, 36 cards left. So there's more options for the Giant to be able to stop Jack from progressing.
Which also brings us back to one of the Giant's abilities, taking a card out as well.
Yeah.
So the Giant can just keep sort of thinning the deck so that he has a lot more, he can manipulate things with a lot more ease.
And it's not always obvious, too. As you said, as the game starts to slow down at the end, the Giant's options become more available to him, and you don't see all the things that he can do, right?
You do not
things
see
sneak up on you very, very quickly in the game.
Those fee, fi, fo, fums, even though there's not many of those cards in the deck.
I think there's 2 of each.
There's 2 of each.
Yeah.
But there have been times where I'm looking at one column thinking, okay, he's trying for fee, fi, fo, fum here, and then I totally miss it down here on the bottom row.
Yeah.
It's really, really good, great 2-player asymmetric game.
Yeah, so very interesting game, guys. Do you have anything else to say about it?
No, I love it. This is a great stocking stuffer for the holidays,
Absolutely.
too. Small little box, excellent little quick game to play with 2 people. This is definitely right up my alley.
Yeah, great filler game, guys. Go check it out. That's The Blood of an Englishman by Renegade Games. It is a 2-player game, plays in about 20 to 30 minutes tops.
Yeah, it can vary, but it's a nice, tidy little game.
Make sure you guys make comments below. Please, of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and please like us on Facebook, and catch us next time on Man vs. Meeple.
Bye-bye.
Season 1 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored by TMG Games, publisher of great games like Yokohama, Guilds of London, and the soon-to-be-released Colosseum.